It is very scary. In the background, you can actually hear shots being fired.
Unfortunately, that call about a shooter at Boulder High School was not the only one. Similar threat calls were made to more than a dozen schools across Colorado. All of them proved to be fake. We have learned there have also been hoax calls to many other West Coast states within the last week. We've got team coverage of the threats and the tolls they took on the Colorado communities today.
And we start with Cole Sullivan live with the extensive search that had to be done after Boulder got that call today. Steve Steger will be along looking back at previous incidents and the trouble caused by the fake calls.
Yeah, Tom, and right now we're hearing from about some students, about 200 of them here in Boulder High School, who waited for 2 hours or so wondering if this active shooter scare was the real thing. Police responded here as if it was. They say the call came in at around 8:33 this morning. Officers were on scene within 3 minutes, the department says. The chief says that she listened to that phone call that came in this morning and says it was a scary call to listen to as well. She says that on it you can hear a man's voice saying that he was outside the school, outside of Boulder High. He said he had semi-automatic weapons and he said he was going inside. Then on the call, she said you could actually hear the sound of gunshots as well. And with that call coming in, especially here in Boulder, that prompted a huge police response. And it was a scary moment for students too. Many of them we talked to that were sheltered inside, waiting to find out what happened and texting their family at home.
Texting my parents, just saying like that I love them and all that, like not knowing really what was going to happen.
That student and others were reunified with their families later this morning, I should say, at an off-campus site back here out at the school in Boulder. The classes were canceled for the day today. After school activities canceled as well. No sign that anything was amiss here besides that phone call. But this was just one of several calls that were sent to school districts across the state that has federal authorities investigating right now. My colleague Steve Steger has more on that. Steve?
Yeah, Cole, we're no strangers to the worst case scenario here in Colorado. And when it comes to these situations, law enforcement have to respond just like that. Schools across southern Colorado dealt with this just 6 months ago, and a resource-heavy response that schools across the state felt again today.
There was a male voice, and that they said they were outside of the school, and that they had a bomb and a AR-15.
That was enough to kick every police officer in Brighton into gear to get to the high school this morning. When
a call like this comes in, it's all hands on deck.
All that police power for nothing.
We can't assume that, that this is just another one of those fake calls. We have to respond the way we do.
They have to do it. Just like these officers did 6 months ago in a similar response in southwest Colorado. These officers are storming Montrose High School.
Ready. Montrose Sheriff's Office!
After a string of suspicious calls to emergency dispatch centers across Colorado on September 19th, 2022. 9 News obtained 2 of them.
And who am I speaking with?
I'm a student here at Littleton High School. You're the active shooter.
One just north of Montrose in Delta.
Do you know where the shooting is coming from?
In the classroom, one student armed with AK-47, wearing black shirt.
Another from a similar sounding man calling about Alamosa High School.
The suspect armed with rifles came to one classroom, shot at 10 students.
Bogus calls.
Okay, we've got people headed that way.
That led to real responses.
It impacts our manning and our staffing, our ability to do other things, probably like no other call does.
Now another investigation begins after a string of similar calls.
Seeing whoever did this and how this occurred and holding those people accountable, that's, I think, the next step with us. And I imagine it's the next step with all these agencies.
The FBI didn't have any information about those cases back in September. I should point out, neither Brighton PD nor Boulder PD could tell us today whether the caller had an accent like the caller in those September calls. Though a law enforcement source told me the caller who phoned in threats to Estes Park High School this morning did have an accent. That said, you can imagine these cases are incredibly complex to try to investigate, Tom. You've got to try to sort out a call that came in that may not have been recorded in some cases. So they've got a lot of work ahead of them.
Yeah, and at the outset, you have to presume that it's legitimate, and that sends everyone into a bit of chaos. Steve, thank you.